The warning came at dawn. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching the sensor screens light up with hostile contacts. 80 ships, all of them heading straight for New Haven Colony. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 border wars and survived them all, but he had never seen anything like this. The Zthan Empire was sending their entire fleet. Lieutenant Sophie Grant stood beside him. She was younger, with sharp eyes and quick hands on the tactical console. She had studied old Earth military history in the academy. Now those old lessons might save them all. How long until they arrive? Jake asked. 6 hours, Sophie said. They are not even trying to hide. They think we are weak. Jake looked at the tactical display. 12 human ships against 80 Zthan warships. The math was simple and brutal. On paper, they had no chance. But Jake had learned long ago that wars were not won on paper. Send the signal, he said. Execute Plan Shadow, Sophie smiled. It was a cold smile. Yes, sir. Across the system, 30 human ships received the coded message. They had been waiting in the asteroid field for 2 weeks, powered down completely. No engines. No weapons. No life support beyond the minimum. They drifted like dead rocks in space. The Zthrans had excellent sensors. Their technology could detect a mouse breathing on a ship 3 light-years away, but their sensors looked for active systems, heat signatures, electromagnetic emissions, radio waves, all the things that made a ship alive. The human ships in the asteroid field gave off none of these signs. They were coated with special materials that absorbed scanning beams. They had been there for weeks and the Zthrans had never seen them. Commander Vexthal led the Zthran fleet. He was a veteran warrior with scales the color of bronze and eyes like yellow diamonds. He had conquered 6 worlds for the Empire. New Haven would be the 7th. The humans have only 12 ships, his sensor officer reported. They are in standard orbital positions around the planet, Vexthal hissed with pleasure. They are fools. They should have run. Begin the attack. The Zthran fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Their ships were beautiful and deadly, with weapons that could crack a planet in half. They split into 3 groups, planning to surround the human defenders. Jake watched them come. Not yet, he whispered. Not yet. The Zthrans opened fire. Missiles and energy beams lit up space. The 12 human ships scattered, dodging and weaving. They fired back, but their weapons seemed weak. The Zthrans pressed forward, confident in their victory. Now, Jake said. In the asteroid field, 30 ships came to life. Engines roared. Weapons charged. Targeting systems locked on. The Zthrans had flown right past them, never knowing they were there. The human ship struck from behind and from the sides. It was not a fair fight anymore. The Zthrans found themselves caught in a crossfire with enemies on all sides. Their beautiful formation broke apart. Where did they come from? Vexthal roared. Our sensors showed nothing. His sensor officer stared at the screens in horror. I do not know, Commander. They were not there. They could not have been there. But they had been there all along, waiting, watching, hidden. The battle lasted 20 minutes. 15 Zthran ships were destroyed. Another 10 were badly damaged. The rest retreated in disorder, their proud formation shattered. On the Defiant, the crew cheered. Sophie was grinning now. We did it, Captain. We actually did it, Jake did not smile. They will come back. Next time they will bring more ships, and they will be looking for tricks. Then we will need better tricks, Sophie said. News of the battle spread across the galaxy like fire. The Galactic Coalition watched with interest. 43 different species had their own intelligence networks, and all of them wanted to know how humans had defeated a superior force. On the colony world below, Private Ryan Cole and his unit prepared for the next phase. Ryan was young and scared, but he had trained for this. His armor was painted with strange patterns that broke up his outline. His face was covered with colors that made him blend into the forest. His sergeant had shown them all the old techniques. How to move without being seen, how to use natural cover, how to become invisible without any technology at all. The Zthrans will come to the surface next time, the sergeant said. They will try to take the colony by force. When they do, we will be ready. Ryan checked his weapon and looked at the forest around him. Somewhere out there, the enemy would come, and when they did, they would learn that humans had been hiding from each other for thousands of years. It was in their blood. It was what they did best. In the Zthran fleet, Vexthal prepared his report for the Empire. It was a bitter message to write. He had lost ships and warriors to an enemy that should have been crushed easily. The humans possess some form of cloaking technology, he wrote. Our sensors could not detect their ships. They appeared from nowhere and struck without warning. I request additional forces and improved scanning equipment. He did not know that the humans had no cloaking technology. They had simply turned off their ships and waited. It was an old submarine trick from ancient Earth. The Zthrans had never seen it before because no one else fought that way. The Empire approved his request. They sent 200 more ships. Vextal would have his revenge. He would crush the humans and teach them the price of defying the Zthran Empire. But first, he needed to understand how they had hidden from his sensors. He studied the battle recordings over and over. He saw his ships flying past the asteroid field. He saw the moment when the human vessels appeared. They had not appeared. They had simply turned on their systems. They had been there all along. It made no sense. What kind of species powered down their own ships in the middle of a war zone? It was madness. It was suicide. It should not have worked, but it had worked. And that terrified him more than any weapon. On New Haven, Jake Morrison looked up at the stars. Sophie stood beside him, tablet in hand. The analysts think the Zthrans will return within a month, she said. They will, Jake agreed. And they will be ready for our tricks this time. So we need new tricks, not new, just older. Jake smiled. How much do you know about the history of camouflage? Sophie's eyes lit up. Everything, sir. I wrote my thesis on it. Good. Then you are about to teach the galaxy something it has forgotten, how to hide in plain sight. The Zthran fleet returned exactly 28 days later. This time, Commander Vextal brought 200 ships. He had studied the previous battle until his eyes hurt. He had upgraded every sensor system in the fleet. He had changed his tactics completely. His ships swept the asteroid field with active scanning pulses. They searched every shadow, every dark corner of the system. They would not be fooled again. But the human ships were not in the asteroid field this time. Sophie stood at her console on the Defiant, watching the Zthran fleet spread out across the system. She allowed herself a small smile. The enemy was looking in all the wrong places. They are searching the asteroids, she reported to Jake. Just as we predicted. Jake nodded. And our fleet? Hidden in the planet's magnetic field. They cannot see us through the interference, and the decoys are working perfectly. The humans had learned from the first battle. This time they deployed sensor decoys throughout the system. Small drones that gave off the same signals as real warships. Heat signatures, electromagnetic pulses, radio chatter. Everything a sensor would expect to see. The Zthrans found these decoys and opened fire. Missiles and energy beams destroyed. Empty drones while the real human fleet waited in the magnetic storms that raged around New Haven. They are wasting ammunition on ghosts, Sophie, said Vextal realized his mistake too late. His sensor officer finally understood that the signatures they were destroying were too small, too simple. They were decoys. Find the real human fleet, Vextal ordered. They must be somewhere. But finding ships hiding in a magnetic field was like looking for shadows in a storm. The natural interference blocked their sensors. By the time they thought to check the planet itself, it was too late. The human fleet emerged from behind New Haven's 3 moons. They had been waiting there using the moons as shields. The reflected sunlight had created sensor shadows that confused Zthran equipment. Now they struck from 3 directions at once. The battle was fierce and fast. The Zthrans had superior numbers, but they were confused and spread out. The humans hit them in coordinated strikes, then vanished back into the magnetic interference before the enemy could respond. It was hit and run warfare, ancient tactics from ancient Earth. The Zthrans had never seen anything like it. Vextal tried to rally his forces, but the humans were like ghosts. They appeared, struck, and disappeared. His sensors could not track them. His weapons could not lock on. It was madness. Land troops on the surface, he ordered in desperation. Take the colony. Force them to defend it. 30 Zthran dropships broke through the battle and headed for New Haven. They carried 2,000 elite soldiers, the best warriors the Empire could provide. If they could take the colony, the humans would have to surrender. Private Ryan Cole watched the dropships descend through the atmosphere. He was lying in the forest covered in leaves and branches. His face was painted green and brown. His armor had patterns that broke up his outline. Next to him, completely invisible until you knew where to look, were 50 other human soldiers. They had been there for hours, waiting, not moving, barely breathing. The Zthan soldiers emerged from their ships. They were big creatures 7 feet tall with scales and claws. They carried advanced weapons and wore armor that could stop most bullets. Their helmets had built-in sensors that showed heat signatures and movement. They advanced into the forest confidently. Their sensors showed nothing. The forest was empty. The humans had run away, or so they thought. Ryan waited until the Zthrans were right in front of him. He could see them clearly, less than 20 feet away. But they could not see him. Their sensors looked for heat signatures and movement. Ryan's suit masked his heat, and he was not moving at all. The signal came through his earpiece. A single click. Ryan and his unit opened fire at the same moment. The Zthrans never knew what hit them. Enemies they could not see attacked from every direction. They tried to return fire, but they had no targets. The human soldiers were invisible in the forest. A Zthan squad leader tried to use his enhanced vision. He switched through different sensor modes: thermal, electromagnetic, motion detection. Nothing worked. The humans were there. He knew they were there, but he could not see them. A human soldier rose from the ground right next to him, covered in leaves and mud. The Zthan had walked past him 3 times without seeing him. The last thing the squad leader saw was the human's weapon pointing at his chest. The battle in the forest lasted an hour. The Zthrans lost 400 soldiers. They retreated back to their dropships, firing wildly at an enemy they could barely see. They had never been so frightened in their lives. In space, Jake pressed his advantage. The Zthan fleet was in disarray. Some ships tried to retreat. Others tried to regroup. The humans hunted them systematically, appearing from the magnetic storms to deliver precise strikes. Vexthal watched his fleet fall apart around him. He had lost 60 ships. His ground forces were broken. And he still did not understand how the humans were doing it. Retreat, he ordered. All ships retreat to hyperspace. The surviving Zthan ships fled the system. Vexthal stared at his sensors as they jumped to safety. The human ships did not pursue. They simply disappeared again, vanishing into the magnetic fields and shadows. On New Haven, the colonists cheered. They had won again. Against impossible odds, they had defeated an invasion force 10 times their size. Ryan sat in the forest, removing the camouflage paint from his face. His hands were shaking. He had been so scared, but the old techniques had worked. The enemy could not see what they were not looking for. His sergeant sat down beside him. "You did good, kid. Your first real combat, and you stayed hidden the whole time." "They walked right past me," Ryan said. "I could have reached out and touched them. But they never saw me." "That's the point," the sergeant said. "The best battle is the one your enemy does not even know they are fighting. We have been doing this for thousands of years. It is what makes us human." In the coalition capital, military observers watched recordings of the battle with growing concern. The Zthan Empire had filed an official complaint. They claimed humans were using illegal cloaking devices that violated treaty regulations. Ambassador Krelvan, a diplomat from the Chirac species, studied the evidence carefully. He was an old insect, with compound eyes that saw in multiple spectrums. He had served the coalition for 40 years. "This is not cloaking technology," he said to his assistants. "Look at the sensor readings. The human ships do not bend light or generate stealth fields. They simply turn off their systems and drift." "That is impossible," one assistant said. "No one fights that way. It is too dangerous." "Humans do," Krelvan said thoughtfully. "I think we need to visit this colony. We need to understand what these creatures have learned." The coalition assembled a delegation to visit New Haven. They would learn the truth about human camouflage, and what they discovered would change galactic warfare forever. The coalition delegation arrived 3 weeks later, 5 ships carrying representatives from 12 different species. Ambassador Krelvan led the mission. He was curious and careful, knowing that first contact with a new military doctrine could be dangerous. Jake Morrison met them at the orbital station. He wore his dress uniform, medals gleaming on his chest. Sophie stood beside him along with a small honor guard. Krelvan studied the human captain with his compound eyes. Humans were strange creatures, soft-skinned, no natural armor, no claws or fangs. They looked weak. Yet they had defeated the Zthan Empire twice. "Captain Morrison," Krelvan said in perfect human language, "the coalition thanks you for receiving us. We have many questions about your defensive tactics." "We are happy to answer them, Ambassador," Jake said. though I suspect you will find our methods disappointing. We use no advanced technology. That is what confuses us, Krelvan admitted. The Zethrans claim you possess cloaking devices. Yet our analysis suggests otherwise, Sophie stepped forward. Ambassador, would you like a demonstration? The delegation was taken to a conference room with large windows overlooking space. Sophie activated a holographic display showing the asteroid field where the first battle had occurred. We call it camouflage, Sophie explained. It is the art of concealment, making yourself invisible to the enemy without any technology at all. The alien observers looked confused. One of them, a crystalline being from a methane world, spoke up. How can you be invisible without cloaking fields? By understanding what the enemy is looking for, Sophie said. Your sensors detect active systems, heat, electromagnetic emissions, movement, so we simply remove those signatures. We powered down our ships completely and drifted like debris. Silence filled the room. The concept was so simple it seemed stupid, yet it had worked. But your crews, another delegate said. How did they survive without life support? Minimum systems, Jake said. Our crews wore emergency suits with their own air supply. They stayed in hibernation pods to reduce oxygen consumption. It was uncomfortable but effective. Dr. Emma Hayes, a human scientist, joined the briefing. She was a specialist in xenobiology, who had studied the differences between human and alien evolution. Most spacefaring species evolved on worlds with thin atmospheres, Emma explained. Your homeworlds had clear skies and excellent visibility. Your wars were always fought in the open. You developed technology-based detection early in your history. She brought up images of Earth, dense forests, thick clouds, oceans and mountains and jungles. Humans evolved on a planet with heavy atmosphere and complex terrain. Our world had countless places to hide. Animals that could hide lived longer. Humans who could hide survived. We learned camouflage before we learned to make fire. Krelvan understood immediately. Evolutionary pressure. Your species developed natural concealment instincts that we never needed. Exactly, Emma said. And when humans went to war with each other, we refined those instincts into a science. We studied how to break up outlines, how to use terrain, how to remain motionless for hours. These techniques are thousands of years old. The delegation wanted to see ground camouflage as well. Jake arranged for them to visit the surface. They were taken to a training ground in the forest where Ryan and his unit were practicing. The aliens stood at the edge of the clearing. Sophie pointed to the forest ahead. There are 50 human soldiers in that forest. See if you can spot them. The delegates used their natural vision and portable sensors. They saw nothing. The forest appeared empty. There is no one there, the crystalline delegate insisted. Sophie smiled and pressed a button on her communicator. Immediately, 50 soldiers stood up from the forest floor. They had been there all along, less than 100 feet away. The delegates had walked right past some of them. Krelvan approached one of the soldiers. It was Ryan, covered in leaves and branches, his face painted in browns and greens. Up close, Krelvan could see him clearly, but from a distance, the human had been completely invisible. This is remarkable, Krelvan said. You use natural materials and patterns to blend with your environment. We call it a ghillie suit, Ryan explained, showing the ambassador the carefully attached vegetation. It breaks up my outline, makes me look like part of the forest instead of a person. And the paint on your face? Human skin is light-colored. It stands out. The paint makes my face blend with the shadows. I also avoid regular shapes. The human face is very recognizable, so I break up the pattern. Krelvan was fascinated. And you can remain motionless for how long? Hours if necessary, Ryan said. Movement gives you away faster than anything. So we learn to control our breathing, stay still, and wait. The delegates spent the next 2 days learning about human camouflage. They saw demonstrations of ship concealment, personal stealth, and tactical deception. They reviewed recordings from both battles, understanding now how simple principles had defeated advanced technology. On their final evening, Krelvan sat with Jake in the observation lounge. New Haven's sun was setting, painting the sky in oranges and reds. Your species is unique, Captain, Krelvan said. Most races abandon natural warfare when they develop technology. You kept both. You blend the old and the new. We learned not to throw away knowledge, Jake said. Just because something is old does not mean it is useless. The universe is full of new problems that need old solutions. The Coalition will accept my report, Krelvan said. I will recommend that your tactics be recognized as legitimate defensive doctrine. But I must warn you, Captain, not everyone will be pleased. The Valdari supremacy? Krelvan nodded. They are a military alliance of aggressive species. They see your camouflage as a threat to galactic stability. They fear that other races will learn your techniques and use them for conquest. We only want to defend our colonies, Jake said. I believe you, but the Valdari do not. They may act against you. Jake looked out at the stars. Then we will be ready. We have been preparing for threats since the day we left Earth. It is what we do best. The Coalition delegation departed the next morning. Krelvan filed his report with the central government. It was detailed and fair, explaining human camouflage as a defensive doctrine rooted in evolutionary necessity. But in the military councils of the Valdari supremacy, the report was seen differently. To them, humans were a danger. A species that could hide from sensors was a species that could strike without warning. It violated their understanding of civilized warfare. The Valdari began preparing for war. The ultimatum arrived 6 months after the Coalition investigation. It came on all frequencies broadcast across human space. The message was clear and threatening. The Valdari supremacy demanded that all human colonies submit to Coalition oversight. Human military tactics must be shared with all species. Failure to comply would result in military action. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Commodore, read the ultimatum in his office on Earth's orbital command station. Sophie stood beside him, now his chief tactical officer. They both knew what this meant. War, Sophie said quietly. Yes, Jake agreed. The Valdari want to eliminate us before our tactics spread. They see us as a threat to their power. What do? We prepare, alert all colonies, mobilize the fleet, and we get creative. The Earth Defense Force moved to full war status. Every ship was recalled and prepared. Every colony established defensive positions. Human engineers worked around the clock developing new applications of camouflage principles. Sophie led a team creating false colony signatures. They built fake settlements that looked real on sensors but were actually empty. They deployed thousands of sensor decoys across human space. They prepared hidden supply depots in uninhabited systems. On the training ground, Sergeant Ryan Cole worked with new recruits. He was no longer a scared private. 2 battles had made him confident and skilled. Now he taught others the art of survival through invisibility. The Valdari have better weapons, he told his students. Better armor, better sensors. But they have one weakness. They depend on their technology completely. When their sensors show nothing, they believe nothing is there. That is when we strike. The Valdari supremacy assembled the largest fleet seen in 3 centuries, 800 warships from 12 different species. They represented the military might of half the galaxy. Their plan was simple. Attack 5 human colonies simultaneously. Overwhelm the defenders with superior numbers. Capture the settlements and force humanity to surrender. They had studied human tactics carefully. They brought advanced scanning equipment designed to detect powered-down ships. They deployed drones to search every shadow. They thought they were ready. They were wrong. The Valdari fleet divided into 5 task forces. Each one approached a different human colony. They scanned carefully, searching for hidden human ships. They found nothing unusual. That should have been their first warning. Nothing unusual was exactly what the humans wanted them to see. The largest Valdari force approached Frontier's edge. This was supposed to be a critical human logistics hub. Their intelligence showed major shipyards and supply centers. 300 ships moved into position to crush the defenses. Jake commanded the defense from his flagship. He watched the Valdari fleet advance with calm calculation. Everything was going according to plan. They are taking the bait, Sophie reported. All 300 ships are focusing on the false targets. The humans had spent months preparing Frontier's edge. They built fake shipyards that looked real on every scanner. They deployed automated systems that gave off heat and electromagnetic signatures. They created the illusion of a major military installation. In reality, Frontier's edge was a trap. The Valdari opened fire on the fake installations. Their weapons destroyed empty buildings and automated drones. They thought they were winning a great victory. Meanwhile, the real human fleet waited in the planet's ring system. Hundreds of ships had been hiding there for weeks, disguised as ice asteroids. Their hulls were coated with frozen water. Their systems were completely powered down. The Valdari scanners had checked the rings and found only natural debris. "Now," Jake said. The ice coating shattered as human ships powered up. 300 vessels emerged from the rings like vengeful ghosts. They struck the Valdari fleet from behind, catching them completely by surprise. The Valdari tried to turn and fight, but they were in the worst possible position. Their ships were spread out, focused on fake targets. The human fleet was concentrated and coordinated. The battle was brutal and short. Half the Valdari task force was destroyed in the first 10 minutes. The rest tried to retreat but found their escape routes blocked by more human ships that appeared from nowhere. On the surface of Frontier's Edge, Valdari troops that had landed found themselves in an even worse situation. The colony they had come to capture did not exist. It was a collection of empty buildings and projectors. Ryan led his unit in the counterattack. They emerged from hidden positions all around the landing zone. The Valdari soldiers found themselves surrounded by enemies they could not see. The alien troops tried to fight, but it was hopeless. Human soldiers appeared and disappeared like phantoms. They used the terrain perfectly, striking from cover and vanishing before the enemy could respond. One Valdari commander tried to rally his forces in a clearing. He thought the open ground would prevent ambushes. But human snipers hidden in the surrounding forest picked off his officers one by one. He never saw who was shooting. After 3 days of fighting an invisible enemy, the surviving Valdari ground forces surrendered. They were exhausted, terrified, and broken. Fighting humans was like fighting ghosts. At the other 4 colonies, similar stories unfolded. The Valdari found empty settlements and hidden fleets. They wasted ammunition on decoys while real human forces struck from unexpected angles. By the end of the first week, the Valdari offensive had collapsed. The Valdari Military Council met in emergency session. They had lost 300 ships and thousands of soldiers. Worse, they had no idea how to fight humans effectively. Every time they thought they understood human tactics, the humans did something different. "They are like water," one general said in frustration. "When we try to grasp them, they slip away. When we ignore them, they strike. How do we fight an enemy we cannot find?" No one had an answer. Ambassador Krelvan arrived at the Valdari capital as a coalition mediator. He had warned them this would happen. Now he tried to salvage peace from the disaster. "The humans have proven their point," he told the Valdari leadership. "They can defend themselves. Continuing this war will only waste more lives. You must negotiate." The Valdari were proud, but they were not stupid. They agreed to peace talks. The alternative was a long war against an enemy they could not defeat. Jake received the news with relief. He had not wanted this war, but he had been prepared to fight it. Now there was a chance for a better outcome. Sophie stood beside him on the bridge, watching the tactical displays go dark as both sides ceased hostilities. "We won," she said. "We survived," Jake corrected. "Now comes the harder part, making them understand that we are not a threat, that our tactics are defensive, not aggressive. Do you think they will listen? They have to. The galaxy is big enough for all of us. We just need to learn to trust each other." On Frontier's Edge, Ryan and his unit celebrated their victory. They had faced impossible odds and won. They had proven that skill and training could overcome superior technology. But Ryan knew this was not over. The Valdari had learned a painful lesson. So had the rest of the galaxy. Humans were different. Humans were dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with weapons or ships. Humans could hide, and in a galaxy that depended on sensors and technology, the ability to hide was the most powerful weapon of all. The peace conference took place on Sanctuary 7, a neutral station that orbited between 3 star systems. No species claimed it as territory. It belonged to everyone and no one. Commodore Jake Morrison led the human delegation. Sophie accompanied him, along with Dr. Emma Hayes and a small team of advisors. Ambassador Krelvan would mediate the discussions between humans and the Valdari supremacy. The Valdari sent their top military commanders and political leaders. They arrived in force, making it clear they were not defeated, merely willing to negotiate. Their pride had been wounded badly, and pride could be a dangerous thing. The first meeting was tense. The Valdari representatives looked at the humans with barely concealed anger. To them, human tactics were cowardly. Hiding instead of fighting openly violated their sense of honor. Krelvan opened the discussion carefully. "We are here to find peace. Both sides have shown their strength. Now we must find a way forward that serves everyone." The Valdari Supreme Commander spoke first. He was a massive creature with armored skin and eyes like burning coals. The humans use dishonorable tactics. They hide like prey animals. They strike from shadows. This is not civilized warfare. Jake kept his voice calm. We fight to survive, not for honor. Our colonies are small compared to your empire. We use the tactics that work. That is not dishonorable. That is smart. You could teach these tactics to others, another Valdari delegate said. Imagine if every species learned to hide as you do. Galactic order would collapse. No one could trust their sensors. No one could be safe, Emma leaned forward. That assumes we want to spread our tactics for aggressive purposes. We do not. We only want to defend our homes. The Coalition investigation confirmed this. Krelvan nodded. The human tactics are defensive by nature. They require patience and preparation. They work best when protecting territory, not conquering it. This is not a tool for invasion. The discussions continued for 3 days. Slowly, both sides found common ground. The Valdari wanted assurance that human camouflage would not be used for aggression. Humans wanted recognition of their right to defend themselves as they saw fit. Sophie proposed a solution. What if we establish a training academy? Other species could learn basic camouflage principles for defensive purposes. We teach them openly, showing that we have nothing to hide. In return, you recognize our sovereignty and our right to use these tactics. The Valdari considered this. Teaching their potential enemies seemed dangerous, but it also might remove the fear of the unknown. If everyone understood human tactics, perhaps they would be less frightening. We would also require the Valdari to pay reparations, Jake added. You attacked our colonies without cause. There must be consequences. The Valdari Supreme Commander bristled but finally nodded. Agreed, we will pay for the damage we caused. But we also require demilitarization of border regions. Neither side should have heavy forces near the other's territory. After 5 days of negotiation, they reached an agreement. The treaty had several key points. Humanity gained full membership in the Galactic Coalition with recognized sovereignty. Human colonies would be protected under Coalition law. In exchange, humans would establish a camouflage training academy open to all Coalition species. The curriculum would cover basic concealment principles for defensive use. Advanced tactics would remain classified but were recognized as legitimate military doctrine. The Valdari would pay reparations and demilitarize border systems. Both sides would participate in joint military exercises to build trust and understanding. The treaty was signed on the 7th day. Cameras from across the galaxy broadcast the ceremony. It marked a new chapter in galactic relations. Humanity had earned its place through strength and wisdom. 6 months later, the Human Tactical Training Academy opened on New Haven. The first class included students from 23 different species. They came to learn what humans knew instinctively: how to hide, how to use terrain, how to see what others missed. Sergeant Ryan Cole was one of the primary instructors. He taught ground combat techniques to aliens who had never considered that warfare could be quiet and subtle. Some students adapted quickly. Others struggled with concepts that went against their entire military tradition. A young Chirac student, similar to Ambassador Krelvan's species, approached Ryan after class one day. Instructor Cole, I must ask, does it not feel wrong to hide? My species believes in direct confrontation. Hiding seems cowardly. Ryan thought carefully before answering. On Earth we have a saying, the best warrior is not the one who fights the most battles. It is the one who chooses which battles to fight. Hiding is not cowardice. It is strategy. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is wait for the right moment. The student considered this and nodded slowly. It was a new way of thinking for many species. Sophie became director of the Camouflage and Concealment Research Institute. Her work combined human ingenuity with alien technology. She developed hybrid systems that merged natural concealment with advanced materials. The results were impressive and drew interest from across the Coalition. Jake accepted a position as Admiral of the Coalition Joint Defense Command. Human and alien forces trained together, learning from each other. The joint exercises revealed that different species brought different strengths. Combined, they were stronger than any single race. Ambassador Krelvan became the Coalition's permanent liaison to human space. He had developed genuine respect for humanity and worked to ensure the lessons of the conflict were not forgotten. Your species has taught us something valuable, he told Jake during one of their regular meetings. That evolution shapes us in unexpected ways. Your Earth made you what you are. Our worlds made us what we are. Together we are more complete. 2 years passed. The galaxy adjusted to the new reality. Human camouflage became a standard part of coalition military doctrine. Some species mastered it quickly. Others never quite got the hang of staying still for hours. The Valdari, surprisingly, became some of the best students. Their pride drove them to excel at what had once defeated them. Several Valdari officers joined human units learning advanced techniques. Old enemies became cautious allies. Then on a quiet morning, long-range coalition sensors detected something impossible. Ships were approaching from outside known space. Hundreds of them. Their technology was far beyond anything the coalition had encountered. The warning went out across all coalition systems. An unknown force was entering the galaxy. They called themselves the Void Collective. Their ships could appear and disappear at will. Their weapons could strike across distances that should have been impossible. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Coalition faced an enemy that might be stronger than they were. An enemy that could hide as well as humans. An enemy that turned their own tactics against them. Jake stood on the bridge of the Coalition flagship, Unity. Around him were officers from a dozen species: human, Valdari, Chirax, Zthan, former enemies standing together. Sophie was feeding tactical data from reconnaissance ships using new hybrid stealth systems. Ryan led a joint strike team preparing to board enemy vessels. The galaxy had learned to work together. Analysis suggests the Void Collective uses dimensional shifting technology, Sophie reported. They are not exactly invisible. They move between normal space and somewhere else. Our sensors cannot track them when they shift. But they have to return to normal space to attack, Jake said. That is when they are vulnerable. We need to predict where they will appear. A Valdari tactical officer spoke up. The humans taught us to watch for patterns. The void ships appear near strategic targets. If we can predict their next target, we can be waiting for them. Jake nodded. Exactly. We use what they expect against them. Let them think we are vulnerable. When they appear, we spring the trap. It was the same principle humans had used against the Zthrans and Valdari. Make the enemy see what they expect. Hide your real strength. Strike when they feel most confident. The first engagement with the Void Collective was scheduled to begin in 6 hours. Every species in the coalition contributed ships and soldiers. They would face this new threat together, using everything they had learned. Jake looked at the diverse crew around him. Humans had changed the galaxy, not through conquest or technology, but by teaching old lessons. How to survive by being smart, how to win by being patient, how to hide in plain sight. The galaxy had learned. Now it was time to see if those lessons would be enough. The Void Collective struck at a coalition mining station in the outer reaches. Their ships appeared from nowhere, weapons blazing. The station was destroyed in minutes. No survivors. No warning. Admiral Jake Morrison studied the attack recordings with his command staff. The enemy ship seemed to flicker in and out of existence. They fired, then vanished before anyone could shoot back. It was terrifying and effective. They are using dimensional technology, Dr. Emma Hayes explained. She had been studying the Void Collective for weeks. They shift between our reality and another dimension. When they are shifted, our weapons cannot touch them. Our sensors cannot see them. But they have to return to our dimension to attack, Sophie added. She had been working on countermeasures. That is their weakness. For a few seconds, they are vulnerable. A few seconds is not much time, a Valdari officer said. It is enough if you are ready, Jake said. We need to predict where they will appear next. Make them come to us. Then we hit them the moment they materialize. The coalition analyzed the Void Collective's attack pattern. They had struck mining stations, research outposts, and supply depots. Always targets that were isolated and poorly defended. They were testing coalition defenses, looking for weaknesses. They will go for the Alexandria station next, Sophie predicted. It is a major supply hub, but only lightly defended. It fits their pattern perfectly. Jake made his decision. We evacuate Alexandria Station. Make it look like we are abandoning it in fear. But we hide our fleet nearby. When the void ships appear, we will be waiting. It was a classic human tactic. Create an irresistible target. Hide your strength. Spring the trap. The other species had learned this approach from humanity. Now they would use it together. The coalition fleet assembled in secret. 200 ships from 15 species. They powered down completely and drifted in the asteroid field near Alexandria Station. Covered in sensor-dampening materials, silent as death. Jake stood on the bridge of Unity waiting. Sophie monitored passive sensors. Ryan and his strike team were ready on assault shuttles, prepared to board any damaged void ships. How long do we wait? The Valdari tactical officer asked. As long as necessary, Jake said. Patience is a weapon. The Void Collective thinks we are weak and scattered. Let them think it. Let them come. They waited for 3 days. 3 days of silence and darkness. The crews stayed in hibernation pods to conserve oxygen. Weapons were pre-charged and ready. Every ship knew its role. On the 3rd day, space itself seemed to tear open. The Void Collective arrived with 30 ships. They materialized around Alexandria Station. Weapons already firing. They expected no resistance. They were wrong. The Coalition fleet powered up as one. 200 ships appeared from the darkness, weapons locked and ready. The Void ships had a moment of confusion. Then the firing began. The Void Collective tried to shift dimensions and escape. But Sophie had been studying their technology. She had developed a countermeasure, a field that disrupted dimensional shifts. It was not perfect, but it bought time. The Void ships flickered, trying to shift. Some succeeded and vanished, but others were caught in the disruption field. They remained solid, vulnerable, unable to escape. Coalition weapons found their targets. Energy beams and missiles struck Void ships. Armor cracked. Systems failed. For the first time, the Void Collective was taking serious damage. 2 Void ships were disabled but intact. Ryan led the boarding action personally. His strike team included humans, Valdari, and Chirac soldiers. They moved through the damaged vessel like shadows, using every camouflage technique they knew. The Void Collective crew fought back, but they were not prepared for close combat. They relied on their dimensional technology for defense. Hand-to-hand fighting was something they had never needed to master. Ryan's team captured the ship's command center. They secured valuable intelligence about Void technology and their base locations. It was a treasure trove of information. The battle lasted 40 minutes. The Void Collective lost 12 ships. The rest fled, their confidence shattered. They had thought they were invincible. The Coalition had proven otherwise. On Unity's bridge, Jake allowed himself a small smile. We did it. We beat them at their own game. Sophie was analyzing the captured data. Admiral, you need to see this. The Void Collective is not a conquest force. They are refugees. Their home dimension is collapsing. They need a new place to live. Jake felt his perspective shift. The Void Collective was not evil. They were desperate. That changed everything. Open a communication channel, he ordered. Let us talk to them. It took time to establish communication. The Void Collective spoke in frequencies humans could barely hear, but eventually they connected. The Void Commander appeared on the screen. It was a being of pure energy, flickering and unstable. You have defeated us, the commander said. Its voice was like wind through empty halls. We expected easy conquest. You were supposed to be primitive. We are not primitive, Jake said. We are adaptable. We learn, we survive. But we do not want to fight you. We want to understand. Why are you attacking us? The Void Commander flickered in surprise. You wish to understand? Not to destroy? Destruction is wasteful, Jake said. Tell us your story. Maybe we can find a better solution. The Void Commander explained their situation. Their dimension was dying. Stars were going out. Reality itself was tearing apart. The Void Collective had no choice but to find a new home. They had chosen violence because they thought it was their only option. Jake consulted with the Coalition leadership. Ambassador Krelvan was particularly vocal. We have empty systems, uninhabited worlds. If the Void Collective is willing to live in peace, we can share space. The galaxy is big enough for everyone. Negotiations began. The Void Collective agreed to cease all attacks. In return, the Coalition would help them find suitable systems to colonize. Systems where dimensional technology would not conflict with Coalition space. It was not perfect. There were problems and disagreements, but it was better than war. 6 months later, Jake stood in his office on Earth, looking at reports from across the galaxy. The Void Collective was settling into their new systems. They were contributing their dimensional technology to Coalition research. Former enemies were becoming neighbors. Sophie entered with a tablet. The latest enrollment numbers for the Academy. We have students from 30 species now, including 5 Void Collective volunteers, Jake smiled. They want to learn camouflage? They said they were impressed by how we hide. They can shift dimensions, but we can hide in plain sight. They think combining both approaches could be revolutionary. Innovation through cooperation, Jake said. That is what we have built here. Not just military tactics, but a new way of thinking about problems. Ryan visited Jake that evening. The young soldier had been promoted to captain, and now commanded an elite joint species unit. He had come to say goodbye before shipping out to the frontier. I wanted to thank you, sir, Ryan said. When this started, I was just a scared private. You and Lieutenant Grant taught me that being invisible is not about fear. It is about patience and strategy. You learned well, Jake said. You have become one of the best instructors we have. The techniques you are teaching will save lives across the galaxy. Do you think it will last? The peace? Jake looked out at the stars. Nothing lasts forever. But we have built something good here. We have shown the galaxy that different species can learn from each other. That old solutions can solve new problems. That survival is better than conquest. The galaxy will never be the same, Ryan said. No, Jake agreed. And that is a good thing. Years passed. The Human Tactical Training Academy became one of the most prestigious institutions in Coalition space. Officers from every species studied there, learning not just camouflage but the philosophy behind it. Think before you act. Use your environment. Turn weakness into strength. Sophie's research led to breakthroughs in stealth technology. By combining human camouflage principles with void dimensional shifting and alien sensor science, she created systems that revolutionized exploration and defense. The Valdari, once humanity's greatest enemy, became their closest allies. They admired the human approach to warfare. Practical, efficient, effective. Their own military doctrine evolved to incorporate these lessons. Ambassador Krelvan retired after 40 years of service. At his farewell ceremony, he spoke about what humanity had taught the galaxy. Before humans joined the Coalition, we believed technology was everything. We forgot that intelligence is the greatest tool. Humans reminded us. They showed us that sometimes the answer is not a better weapon, but a better strategy, not a stronger shield, but a wiser approach. Jake Morrison eventually retired as well, though he remained a consultant to Coalition Defense Forces. He wrote a book about his experiences. It became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. The book's final chapters spoke about the future. Jake wrote that humanity's greatest contribution was not camouflage itself. It was the idea that every species has unique strengths born from their evolution. Earth's dense forest taught humans to hide. Other worlds taught their inhabitants different lessons. The galaxy was stronger when everyone shared their knowledge. On New Haven, now a thriving world and center of human culture, a monument was erected. It showed a human soldier in camouflage, barely visible,